Welcome back again. So the objective of this video is to factor trinomial quadratics. The difference being this one, the leading coefficient, or the a term, is not 1. And the specific method of this video is factoring by grouping, and it's a little difficult to describe what the grouping is without doing it. So there are two elements of commonality in things we've been doing from the past. The first one is the X pattern, where A times B that adds to C, and the other one is a greatest common factor. We're going to use them both in coming up with the factors of these more complex trinomials. So the first one is, the first trinomial I've got is 3x squared plus 13x minus 10. So the X pattern, A times C, 3 times negative 10 is negative 30, and B is 13. The factors of negative 30 that add to 13 would be 15 and negative 2. Now, we're all set up. So what one does at this point is take the first term and the last term, 3x squared minus 10, and write them down, and then take the sides of the X pattern and use those to come up with the middle term. And the middle term, the linear term, is 13x. We're just going to expand that 13x out. And what I mean by expand it out is I'm going to take those parts of the X pattern right there and use those to be the terms that are combined to come up with 13x. So they would be plus 15x and negative 2x. You got to take those and those pieces and put an x on them, and then this now is going to be grouped. So I'm going to rewrite it because I'm going to group it. So 3x squared plus 15x minus 2x minus 10. So I'm going to group the first two terms and the last two terms. And the reason I'm grouping them is now I'm going to factor a GCF out of each group. So the GCF between 3x squared and 15x is 3x. And when you take 3x out of 3x squared, it leaves x behind. And when you take 3x out of 15x, it leaves 5 behind. Then I'm going to factor these two, and when the greatest common factor between negative 2x and negative 10 is negative 2, and when you take a negative 2 out of negative 2x, it leaves x behind. And when you take a negative 2x out of negative 10, it leaves positive 5 behind. You got to be awake when you're with these negative signs on these. That's not the easiest part to do. Now we're almost done. The trick at this stage of the game is now there is another common factor. In this term right here, there's a factor of x plus 5, and in this term right here, there's a factor of x plus 5. So I'm going to take that factor out, and so there's the grouping part. You group them, and the idea behind grouping them is to come up with a binomial that is a common factor. And so when I take x plus 5 out of 3x times x plus 5, what's left behind is 3x. And when I take an x plus 5 out of negative 2 times x plus 5, what's left behind is negative 2. And we are done. try another one. This one would be 9x squared plus 35x minus 4. So a times c, 9 times negative 4 is negative 36, and b is 35. And the factors of negative 36 that add to 35 would be 36 and negative 1. That one's kind of handy. Some of these, when the a term and the c term are both fairly large numbers, like if c was negative 10, then it would be the factors of negative 900 or, well, negative 90 that added to God only knows what. They can get really involved, but sometimes they're just like this. Let's see. So now I'm going to first term 9x squared, last term negative 4, and then I'm going to use these guys to come up with the middle term, 36x and negative x, or negative 1x if you want. And then I'm going to take a GCF out of the first group and a GCF out of the second group. And by the way, it does kind of matter how they're grouped. So you can put the negative x before the 36x. You can switch these two terms, and sometimes it matters. So if the first approach you tried doesn't work, try switching those two terms. So the greatest common factor between 9x squared and 36x would be 9x, and left behind would be x plus 4. And then the greatest common factor between negative 1x and negative 4 would be negative 1, and left behind would be x. And you take a negative out of a negative, a positive is left, is x plus 4. And here we are, we're seconds from a clean getaway again. I'm going to take that x plus 4 term out of both terms, x plus 4, and left behind here is 9x, and left behind there is negative 1, and we're done. So in summary, to do factoring by grouping, the trick is to use the X pattern to come up with the terms on the side which are used to expand the linear term out, and then take the first two terms and group them together, the second two terms and group them together, and then factor a GCF out of each pair. And then if it's been done correctly, there will be a binomial that can be factored out, and so after that binomial is factored out, what remains is another binomial, and you're done. So take care then. Bye-bye now.